Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Launch Point Leader Podcast. My name is Lori.
And I'm Beau.
And we're excited to be back here with you for another week to share with you a letter a listener has written into us.
Let's go.
So we'll get right into it. Today it says, Dear Launch Point, I hope this doesn't come across as too repetitive, as I know you've talked about similar things before, but I want to write about the isolation I've been feeling recently. As a leader, I find the higher I go, the more isolated I feel. The responsibility for big decisions, company direction, and the livelihoods of others can be really overwhelming. But what's really hard is receiving honest feedback. The further up I go, the more I realize people hesitate to give me their unfiltered perspective, whether it's out of fear of repercussions or just respect for my position. But without that candid input, I sometimes feel like I'm leading in a vacuum, unsure if I'm getting the full picture. I'd love to hear your take on this. You've talked about dealing with loneliness as a leader in other aspects, but could you dig deeper into breaking through barriers and creating spaces where we can be vulnerable and receive honest feedback? I've tried things like surveys and special meetings, but I don't feel as if I've reached a breakthrough. Thanks for your thoughts. From False Feedback.
So I really don't like surveys. I've kind of come to know that. And so I feel this one a good bit. I think I want to address thank you for writing in first off, but I want to address the isolation piece and this loneliness piece because we have talked about it before. But I want to kind of dive in maybe a little bit of a different way. It is very true that the higher you go, the tendency becomes the lonelier it feels. And the isolation does start to set in because you're leading a group of people that really have no idea what you're dealing with, right? So they don't get all of the feedback that you're getting. They don't get all of the criticism that you're getting in the situations. But thinking about this, I would encourage this reader and our listeners to say, or this writer and our listeners to think about, isolation is a dangerous place and it is a choice. And the further we go, the natural tendency is isolation becomes like normal. And I don't think we're designed that way. I don't think God designed us to live in an isolated manner. And so I would just say isolation is a little bit dangerous. And if we're not careful, we'll begin to think about and justify us being isolated as the right choice. And when I think about that, because I think a lot of bad things happen when you're isolated, right? And so you've got to really work and fight. And this is a great question for us. And I'm glad this person wrote in because you've got to fight against isolation and have a plan for it. And when I was kind of thinking about this as you were reading, one of the things that popped in my head was, it's almost like saying to our kids, if you've got kids or even a spouse, like, you don't know what it's like to be your dad or your mom. You don't know what it's like to be your husband or your wife. And it's like, well, no, I don't. But should I? Like, should I really know that? How you feel and what it's like? And so I think it's almost that way with our team. It's like the team really shouldn't have to know and empathize and understand what it's like to be us. It's actually our job, because we are at that level, to reverse that and go, are we empathizing and understanding what it's like to be them? As we understand more of what it's like to be them, then that isolation, I think, starts to break down a little bit. The only thing I want to hit on there before we get into the feedback is just making sure that we don't create this mindset that says, because I'm a big L leader or I'm at a certain level that nobody else understands. There is a lot of truth to that, but don't create a mindset that says, because nobody else understands, I'm justified in feeling alone or isolated. That makes sense?
Yeah, it does. I really love what you said there. They shouldn't have to know what it's like, right?
Yeah.
And I've been in those situations where I felt like, well, if they knew what it was like, or if they understood, or they even had half of what I have on my brain right now, then they would treat this situation differently, or they would feel differently. And just the idea that part of you being a leader is taking that on for them so they don't have to feel that way. They can do their work and grow, and maybe they will be that leader one day, but being there for them. So I think that idea of kind of changing the way we look at isolation and saying, I am taking this on, but I'm going to take the time to get to know my team and kind of flip it on your head. It's almost that idea we've talked about in the book, QBQ, or question behind the question. It really is that question of like, you can't control everything, but you can control what you do and how you react.
Yeah, and I think when you flip, and we'll get to this feedback part in a second, because I feel like that's probably the root cause of why they wrote this letter. But when you take that and flip it and make it a paradigm shift, and you go, if you're feeling isolated, go spend more time with the people that you feel isolated from, and start learning about what it is that they're experiencing and doing. And I think it'll open up your eyes to maybe things that you might be doing that aren't connecting with them, or it gives you an amazing opportunity if they start talking about something and it's like man, you have no idea. Well, why not share a little bit of it with them? Why not share, not like pour your heart out, but like, well, hey, actually in that situation, I'm glad you brought it up, because this was all the other backstory that I can share with you that was going on at the time. And it makes them feel a little bit more like a part of the team, I think, if you will.
Yeah, it's that just feeling that bought in and almost special for getting to hear some of that behind the scenes you don't get to hear is really important as well. I remember specifically when I started to learn what's going on behind the scenes. I've always loved just understanding what makes things happen and what it takes to get to, the big picture, what everybody's seeing. And I think that really helps people feel bought in. You're exactly right. And I like the idea, what you said, of open your eyes to what isn't connecting with them, because you might not know. Maybe you feel like you've connected with them in certain areas, and this is going to show you those areas.
Well, I think then going into the feedback piece, right? Because that was the second half of the letter, talking about feeling like you're not getting that feedback that you need that's really honest. And I think we've touched on this a little bit in the past. Just to kind of expand on it some, I would say a couple of ideas to that would be, number one, have you considered having a personal board of directors? If you're at a level in an organization where there's not a board or a body that is giving you consistent feedback, I would encourage you to think about creating your own board or your own body that does that. And so a suggestion of this might be, just like a normal board at a publicly traded company, create your own personal board, 3, 4, 5, 6 individuals that are leaders in the community. Maybe one or two of them have some background in the business that you're in, but the rest don't. They're just leaders that you admire or aspire to be like. Have them come into your business one day every quarter and spend part of the day with you, maybe to kind of tee it off at the beginning. Then have them spend some time just in your company, walking through, talking to people, seeing the operations, seeing the nuts and bolts of everything that you're doing, and then wrapping up with you, and let them give you their honest feedback. Because if you actually think that they're great leaders in their industry and what they do, they're going to come in with a completely unfiltered view, and they don't know all of the stories and the reasons behind. They're just going to come in and give you an objective, I think, hopefully objective feedback that you can then take and go, because I respect who they are, and I know they're kind of in a position like I am. They're coming in with no preconceived notions, and here's the honest feedback. So I would say that would be my first and probably most important thing I would suggest, is create that personal board of directors.
Yeah, that's a amazing concept, right? My first thought goes to, what's the pitch to ask somebody to join something like this or to do something? It sounds like you've had people come in and do this. If I'm a especially newer business owner, newer leader, how am I asking people and getting this started?
You would be amazed, I think, at the receptiveness that people have to helping fellow business leaders or nonprofit leaders, community leaders, to helping them grow and succeed. I think it's an interesting thing. Business is seen as cutthroat sometimes.
Sure.
And I'm sure there are elements of that, but I honestly, I've not experienced much of that. I've experienced much more of the side that says, we're all doing this together, and we all want to make the world a better place through what we're doing. And if I can come alongside you and be any help to you, I'm willing to do that. So the pitch that I would recommend is something as simple as just saying, hey, here's what I'm doing. I want to grow. I want to get better. I respect you and what you do in your industry and in our community. And I would love to get your feedback and your time. And I know your time is very valuable, but if you would be willing to help me with this, part of the pitch might be I'll make a donation to the organization if it's a nonprofit, or I maybe think of some unique way that your company and the thing that you do can provide them with something they wouldn't otherwise have. Maybe it's, discounts or freebies or something like that, or donations to an organization in their name. Most of the time, people don't need that. And again, this isn't the high level C-suite corporate board level. We're talking about small business here. And so I think most of the time people will jump on board. Don't overlook the fact that if you go ask somebody to do this, it is so uncommon. Right? Like it's so uncommon. It's like, would you come be on my personal board of directors? I don't have to report to anybody, but I really want your feedback because I respect it and I want to get better. I have to say, if you're asking the right leader, most of the time they're going to be like, man, as long as it works with my schedule, absolutely. Yeah. That's really, really a cool idea. But I think you can offer to make some donations, give away some stuff as well, just to show that you're honoring their time with you.
Yeah, I think that's great. Just a few places to start and look. And I think most people, honestly, you're going to be surprised with the reception you get asking for any type of thing. You always feel awkward at first, right? You're scared of the no. But I think the rewards and the yeses you're going to get out of that is going to have a great impact on your business. What else do you have on feedback, maybe directly from their team? Like, what are some ways they can get their team to open up more?
I think just being honest and transparent with your team about the business, about what's going on, about where you're looking, what you're thinking, what you think the future might look like, giving them the why behind certain decisions. The more transparent you can be as a leader to them, the more transparent they will be with feedback back to you, or the more accurate they'll be with feedback back to you. Surveys are good. I think you have to learn what questions to ask. Sure. What are you really trying to understand, and ask that question. Try to stay away from broad questions. If you want to know something, or you feel like something feels off right here, or I really want to get their perspective, ask them that specific question. And don't dance around the subject, and then when two people really get right to it, be offended by what they say. Ask the specific question and go there. Last thing I'll say is have one-on-ones. Maybe you have one-on-ones regularly with leadership. Maybe go a level lower. Maybe go to the front lines of your organization and just talk to them and say, hey, tell me what it's like to work here. Tell me what your feedback looks like. What would you change if you were the boss tomorrow? Right. What are the 3 things you would change? And I think just the connectivity that could bring to your organization would be something that is going to start, the talk is going to start amongst the folks. So,
and that definitely makes a huge impact. Someone that we work with, Jeremy, I hope you're listening. You can text me if you are.
Jeremy, text us.
If you don't text us, we'll know you didn't
right
listen.
Now, phone's right here. Okay? All right.
But when he took over a new restaurant, he spent his first month and met not just with the director level or the highest level leaders in the store. He sat down with probably over 40 people in the restaurant in his first month there. And I think it was a huge time taker, right? It wasn't like his most convenient schedule he's ever had, but I think he walked away from that. And it's just so cool to hear the stories and the connections he made in a really short amount of time for that. I think it really set the tone for his leadership there. And this can work, you're right. Even if you're not brand new in that space, if it's your same team and same people, getting that one-on-one time, and even if it's not something you're doing for the rest of eternity, something like that I think could really help you. Yeah.
And lastly, hire a coach. I mean, we obviously offer that, but there's plenty of other coaches that can help you as well. Right. But having that unbiased feedback is oftentimes the breakthrough. The magic comes in all of this, right? Is not having an isolationist mindset, checking yourself on that. Maybe considering looking at an outside board of directors personally, or an outside coach to give you that unfiltered feedback. And then thirdly, really connecting back with your team, doing the unexpected, asking them the right questions, letting them give you feedback in real time, but not waiting necessarily for a survey all the time, seeking it out without it being a formal process. And then lastly, the survey is always kind of I think the survey is the last go-to, in my opinion.
Rather than your first tool you pull out.
Correct, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's a better summary than I could have done. You wrapped it up
Oh,
right
hey.
there. Put a bow on it. It's
There you
amazing.
go. I did put a bow on it.
A bow on it.
all the time.
There you go. Well, false feedback, thank you so much for writing in. We really appreciate just your opportunity to share with us what you're going through, and I hope you're able to take some tangible things away from this today. Everyone else listening, if you ever want to write in, you can write us in at advice@launchpointleader.com. Have a great week.
Have a good one.